Gather round, dads, it's time for a tale. Hand me a book and a warm pint of ale. Let's discuss writing and the literary gods with Dan Roberts on the Dad Lit Pod.
Welcome to the Dadlit Pod, the literary podcast for everyone knows. The literary podcast for everyone who knows everything is bigger in Texas, including the number of Dadlit authors. One of those Dadlit authors is Nicholas Osborn. Nick is a, can I call you Nick?
That works for me.
Nick is a second generation ranch owner and storyteller from the deep heart of East Texas. Nick's debut series, A Day Late and a Bullet Short, Three Bullets to the Wind and Another Day, Another Bullet, aims to mythologize the piney woods he grew up in and welcome readers to a new chapter of modern westerns, born of tall tales that help shape the genre. His writing is inspired by the history of the Lone Star State, the greater United States, and the larger-than-life heroes, gunslingers, and black hats that gave us the myth of the West we know and love today. Nick is an owner at his family's cattle ranch and first-time father with his wife of over 10 years. As one of multiple generations of his family working on the Red Rock Limousine Ranch, Nicholas has put his experience into words as an author with a passion to keep timeless Western culture alive and thriving for today's readers. Nick, welcome to the Dadlit Pod. Did I properly encapsulate you in that introduction, which
That,
you, I think, wrote?
that wasn't my writing at all. That was no, I really appreciate you having me on, and I do want to thank you for everything you do for Texas authors and indie authors in general, the Western genre. I'm a fan of your work and happy to be here.
Well, thank you. Nick, people tell me this, and I'm going to be honest with you. I think it's because everyone I interview is from the South and they're so polite because it's not exactly a heavy lift for me to talk to cool people about their books. It's actually pretty entertaining for me, and how I would like to spend my time if I didn't live in the burbs and could be out amongst the humanity of the world, and get a more chance to hang out with people. I think this is sort of a thing that fathers deal with. But of course, you're on the ranch with a multi-generation family ranch. Tell me about that.
Absolutely. It's a it's something that you don't see a lot of today, right? So it's something that I'm really proud to talk about and have as a part of my journey as an author and the stories that I want to tell, because it came to a point where everything is sort of tied together. This ranch that I'm working on, our family, what we're building. It came at a time I'm writing A Day Late and a Bullet Short while my wife is pregnant, and we're getting ready to grow our family and do all these things. My family moved from Houston out to the Deep East Texas when I was real small, bought a little ranch out here, and we got into 4-H and FFA. My dad used to show back in the day. He got back into it with us, started buying some cows, and it really took off. My grandfather, my father really, built this place up to where we're one of the premier limousine Angus, they call them Linflex crosses in the industry. So we go to all the major stock shows. We go to nationals. We do genetic sales. We're really into show quality and producing genetically sound cattle that can do their job and perform in the show ring as well. It's a lot to learn. It's a lot of work, but it's a great time.
So, believe it or not, weirdly, I have some experience with this question of genetics and cattle, and so basically, what you're doing is you are raising the Rolls Royce of breeding cattle. The underlying idea is that if you have the sort of inbreeding and monoculture in the cattle world, You can have immunological issues. You can have all sorts of problems associated with the cattle. So you are providing genetic diversity, but not just genetic diversity, just fine, healthy cattle for procreative purposes at the more industrial farms. Did I encapsulate that right?
I think that there's a lot of big words in there that tell the right story. I like to say if you can imagine the perfect cow in every way,
Yep.
what does that look like? How do we define that? And then how do we get to that? And I
Yep.
think that a lot of people define it in a lot of different ways. You'll see that in judges in the show ring. They always say it's one man's opinion on one day, and you just need to hear him, hear him out, and then go on about your business. But what we do here is really chasing that ideal cow that will do its job and perform and have everything genetically that we want it to do to continue the line to build the herd in a really successful way. And there's a lot of people that say the stock shows are pageants, and there's a lot that goes into
Well, yeah, you
it.
got to have a good looking cow.
Oh yeah.
You're not gonna bring a warty, rough looking, you're not selling it for a bag of beans here,
No,
folks.
you are not. And that's, we're not the cattle when you go to the sale barn. That is not what you'll find at our herd. We do a lot of genetics work. So that's
Hmm.
a big part of this ranch is really pushing the envelope in a lot of different exciting ways and really getting involved with some of the industry leaders and some of the best ranches around Texas and the United States. And that's one of the most exciting things about it. And it opens doors to see that and an inspiration for what really made me want to dive into contemporary westerns is because
Hmm.
this world is not something that you see online. It's not something that you're going to find on X or Instagram or things like that. It's something that you really need to go be a part of and see just how prolific it is and how expansive and welcoming it is. There's something that I think a lot of people assume this sort of Western lifestyle and things like this are dying out or they're changing so much that they're getting swallowed up by these big cities. And when you come out to a ranch like what we have in middle of nowhere, East Texas, and you can see sort of these really cool traditions and what it takes for each generation to get involved in agriculture and really become a key part of that moving forward is really exciting to see. And it made me think about, all the different from music to TV shows, all the different entertainment that we do when we're not outside working, what's catering to that? Is there anybody telling those stories or at least shining a light on how those things are still alive today? And you'll see that as a recurring theme in my writing, especially for this series, because it's something that I'm inspired by every day because it's something that I'm out there doing, whether it's, just
Hmm.
simple vaccinations, worming, putting fly control on, typical daily stuff to hitting the show ring and nationals at Congress in Oklahoma. And you get to see, where all the big money is. It's something that, when you take a Western like this that is meant to be fun and enjoyable and exciting and all these cool things, but it's also meant to kind of at least showcase that there are younger Western authors like me who are out here, really in the middle of it, and we can tell stories that you're just not going to find at Barnes and Noble or something like that because Westerns are tough, right? I mean, if you go to any bookshelf, it's basically half of it's Louis L'Amour, and then the other half are
Or Cormac McCarthy. It's just it's one volume of Cormac McCarthy repeated
right.
over and over again.
And
Yeah.
it really is. It's like it's this burden to bear, not just as an author, but trying to run a successful ranch. Everybody will tell you there's not a ranch or a farm that makes money out there, and
This is indeed what I've heard. And if you'll actually believe it, there was a time where my family tried to put together a herd of robust sheep. And we're considering it did not work out.
yeah,
It was in partnership with an unreliable partner, and the underlying challenges of that just didn't work out, unfortunately.
It's often the case. It's not an easy thing to get going. And I always like to say we might be some of the last generations that can come into it fresh and able to get land and get whatever livestock you want to run, whatever crop you're trying to build up. There's the opportunity or the window to do that is closing with each generation. And it's
Hmm.
such a big deal to have the next generation involved in learning these things because it really is generational knowledge. I don't say that there's multiple generations of this family on just because it's fun to say and it sounds like this big thing. It's you get an idea of the breadth of knowledge that it takes to do something like this because yeah, it's not something that's online all the time. It's not something that the information
Hmm.
is just readily available. And when you live in that and you sort of work in that environment and atmosphere, you start to see how there's that bleeds into other things also. When I sat down and I wanted to read a Western book that was at least set in modern times and dealt with some of the original themes and things like that, do a Google search. You're going to find probably the same Goodreads list that I found or a couple of Amazon reviews that touch on it. And there's not a whole lot out there. It's sort of this it is a new frontier basically for storytelling and what we can do with the West in the modern age. And I always like to say Yellowstone brought in all the viewers.
Yeah, but the Yellowstone vision of ranching is like the exact opposite of what you're doing.
It's a lot more glamorous, I'll say that. So, but I do think that there are people interested in these kinds of stories that aren't living on a ranch, that don't work cattle every day, that
Yeah.
don't even put their boots on, that are they're genuinely interested in these stories because it's a way of life that is purely American in this strange sense, and I really dive into what that means in the first book, especially A Day Late and a Bullet Short, because I'm coming to terms with my own place in this ranch and my own place in this family, and expressing that in this adventure story that brings a lot of Western ideals into it. And I think that it's really a great entry point for people who, whether they, are like me and they're working on a ranch, or they just watch Yellowstone once a week and they're kind of, I think it's at least welcoming where it doesn't bash you over the head with all these different things. It's really a fun ride, and it's meant to bring people into this genre and into the themes and into the types of storytelling that we all love that grew up with Westerns and all these different things, but it packages it in a more approachable way.
Yeah, I would describe it as sort of like Indiana Jones set in East Texas.
I like
Uh,
that.
yes, yeah. So if you're interested, that's what you're shooting for is sort of um you'll get an Indiana Jones in East Texas. A lot of it's sort of the generations of land use mythology, right? There's the Amerindian mythology associated with the land in East Texas, followed by the 19th century mythology of land use in East Texas, and a little gangster, and some gun shooting.
That's a pretty good description, I would say.
See, I read it.
Yep, that's thank you for that. That means
Yeah.
a lot. Uh,
The things I like about it, I love the protagonist, or one of the protagonists, is a ranger who talks about local folklore in East Texas. And one of the things that I love about going to rural communities and small towns is that um, places have stories. And in a lot of ways, that's what your book is about, I found, which was that each and every place had a story associated with it, and you were sort of walking in the footsteps of an ancestor. And I have a very similar experience with the town that I grew up in Maine, where there've been My relatives have been there since the 1830s, and that's they didn't go anywhere. They probably should have. They would have been much better off, but they waited it out and they stuck around. And so I really like that element of the book. I really enjoy it. I obviously also love when people are getting shot up and all that dad lit stuff that I'm really into.
Absolutely. I think that's a really a great insight into it. Ultimately, the story was built on these foundations that first shaped the state of Texas. That was one
Yep.
of my overall views to kick off this world essentially. That a lot of stories are built on top of stories that came before them. And
Hmm.
sometimes they're competing, sometimes they work together, sometimes you're not always sure how they come together in the end and they find their own unique way. And I think that when we see the different moving pieces in this story, I really lean into the history that shaped the state because that's such a pivotal moment in my own journey and setting up as a family in East Texas. I would say I'm a first generation Texan. My dad came from Arizona. My mother came from up north. They moved to Texas. The fun story is that they were 2 weeks away from my brother, who's a little bit older than me, hauling from Florida to Texas to make sure we were born in Texas. I think about, what led me to this, and I've got my mother's side, where my ancestors are traced back to the Trail of Tears. My father's side traces back to the signing of the Declaration of Independence, and
Hmm.
finding my place as sort of both a little bit of descendants in the Native American, a little bit of descendants in colonization and the what it looks like for the state of Texas as it grows and takes shape. So I have these moving pieces of Davy as this park ranger who's telling these stories on public land, state park land, and passing down these generational stories that he's not even 100% sure where they came from. He just knows that these are the stories of this place and that these are what he's sharing and these are what he's interested in. And we're introduced to Rose in a pretty violent way because that's where her story and her ancestors and this path has taken her, and you find them longing for what they each have, right?
Hmm.
Davy is searching for something because he's sitting in this state park day after day where he wanted adventure and he wanted to do something more, and he always felt called to something more. But he's living on his family's land that was given to him. He sort of achieved his career goals and being this park ranger, but it wasn't everything it was cracked up to be, right? Like it wasn't this huge Joe Pickett style adventure that he could live on for the rest of his life. It was something else where he's talking to kids who are hiking by and telling them tales that he's been telling for a long time. And Rose is chasing the type of security and the type of fate really that Davy was launched into. And it puts them on this really interesting path because they have what each other wants. And I think that became sort of this fun dynamic between the two, that they found something that they've inherently wanted for so long in one another. And it wasn't always meant to be this somewhat romance story. I didn't set out to write it like that. I did not intend for that, but
Well, you put an attractive woman, an attractive man together on an adventure.
there it goes. And I almost set those paths up myself, right? Because the Caddo mythology that Rose really explores and that her people come from, they trace their lineage through the women. So it
Hmm.
felt dishonest to do anything other than have this Native American, focal point of the story be anything other than a woman, because that's a whole point of this is the generational knowledge and the tales that get told. And when you look at somebody like Davy and the ranch that gets hands down, and he's going into the state park, he's this sort of stereotypical figure in East Texas. You assume that goes to the firstborn male, right? Like this idea of where that story goes and who's the expected predecessor. And I
Right.
think that those finding their role in that, you get a sense pretty quick that you are walking in their ancestors' shoes. You're experiencing it through today, and their only focus is setting up tomorrow for what they hope for to be the future. And so
Mhm.
I have these things where you explore the history of Texas, you explore, sort of what made the moving pieces take shape. I've got some fun early historical quotes in there that a lot of people are probably not going to guess. One of the first expeditions when they came from Florida essentially and made their way down into Texas when the Spanish were coming in. And I think that I wanted to tell, if you look at the history of Texas, we always say, it was colonized after it was explored, after it was already owned from natives. And
Mhm.
you see these different pieces coming into it. So you're thrust into like one family struggle to do something with all these different forces constantly forcing it to change. And that was where I pick up with Rose and Davy, where you are thrown into the middle of it. But I don't shy away from the gunfights, what makes a Western interesting, what keeps us sticking around, right? Like I wanted to show that these types of stories work really well in a modern age too. One of my favorite instances of feedback I got was from a buddy who read it before it was published, just got some eyes on it. And he said, I read the whole first chapter and it honestly never even clicked that we were in today's world until she got in the SUV and drove off. And I was like,
Mhm.
there's neons, there's a jukebox, like I've got one guy with like a Glock pistol, one guy with an AR. Like I tried to set the stage for it, but I think it feels so overt in these Western themes that it's easy to see just how well it transfers over. And that was really
Mhm.
exciting for me to hear because I wanted to tell a story that if it was set in the 1880s, 1870s, it really could be told just the same.
Yeah, I
You'll
mean it's the treasure of the Sierra Madre, right? But
Right.
in East Texas.
Absolutely. And it's a silly tale. The tale that Davy tells, the one that he's been told since he was a kid that really dives into it is it started with a really silly idea of, outlaws and this constant goal to rob every bank, to rob every stagecoach, to just get everything that they could get. But you can't really do anything with it. And if you don't own any land, what are you doing with it? So this idea was like this guy is so successful, he just keeps robbing, and then he's got a trail of horses, and then that's too much. So he's got a caravan, and then that's too much. And he's like, what do I do with all this gold and all this money? So he just starts burying it. And this idea is like, it's something that one of my favorite parts of a lot of Westerns is that they can be kind of silly. Like there's a sense of humor into some of the even the most serious Westerns because that's all that's available at the time. So
Mhm.
it really is this silly idea of what if somebody's too good at what they do and he's an outlaw in the Old West? Because a lot of the tales, especially what inspired me when I was writing this, is the dime novels. We get a lot of Buffalo Bill and Wyatt Earp and these larger than life characters, and it was always that they did these magnificent, grand things that could have never been achieved, but they blow them way out of proportion. And they're like, trust me, it's 100% real. And they're writing, and it's like, Wyatt Earp killed 100 people at one time and never took a bullet, and like all these different things. They are over the top and almost unbelievable. So it tells this tale of what if it's one of these over the top stories that is so unbelievable it might be true. And it's
Mhm.
just enough to get Davy to be like, this is what I'm looking for in my life. Rose is sort of this explosive figure who comes guns first into my life and is going to drag me along here whether I want to or not. And he's ready for it. And it's something
Mhm.
that I've really connected with that at a time because my wife and I are together for a decade before we decide to have a kid.
And she drags you along with
It's like here's the
it.
thing is like now your life has totally changed. You had no idea you really wanted that. And as you grow and you change and you sort of build this life together, you start to want things you didn't always want.
Mhm.
And that was one of them, right? Like becoming a dad was something that a few years back wasn't as important, and then it becomes the most important thing in your life. And I really connected to that as part of this journey that gets him into this, that gets Davy out into the world and out of his comfort zone and really fight for something that he wants. And
Mhm.
that became this huge motive. And then everything else starts falling into place because it aligns with where I'm at in my life at the time. Because we're setting up the future. Everything is about, what's gonna happen, and we have to get ready now.
Mhm.
Real life, it looks like buying a lot of diapers and wipes and the wipe warmer and everything that goes with it and all of this. For dating,
I never bought the wipe warmer.
that was
That
the
seems
suggestion
that
from
seems a little
grandma.
bougie for me.
I will say that was a suggestion from grandma that worked out really well. So I'm
Oh,
always
okay.
going to bring that one up. But that was sort of the thing that as I'm writing this story, it really starts to just become a reflection of where I'm at in my life, in sort of this strange way. And I think that there was no other route for me to take but to let these different characters become a reflection of my own identity as an individual and what I want in life and what I'm trying to build out here in East Texas. And it
Hmm.
became a platform to do that.
That's interesting. What do you think it means to be a contemporary Texas author today? I mean, we talk about, I've talked to a lot of Texas authors and a lot of East Texas authors. I've finally got an Oklahoma author that I'm going to talk to in 2 months, but a lot of authors in East Texas. What what is it about Texas that inspires? Is it just that it's so big and that its history so dramatic and that its identity is so singular that it just lends itself to art? I mean, I just wondering what is it about? Because I haven't written anything about Texas yet. Uh, so you tell me.
For me, I really do think it's the singular identity, right?
Mhm.
What was Glenn Powell when he was asked, was it Glenn Powell? Is that his name? From the
Yeah,
Twisters movie. When he was asked if he was going to be James Bond, and he was like, I'm Texan. I can't play that. That's for a Brit. And
yeah.
everyone, like, I love that he said he's Texan and not he's American. And I think like the feeling of it is you're a Texan first in that identity.
Yeah.
And the importance of it being in what you're doing and who you are and how you live. And I think that Texas has that history. It has the culture that's really alive today. I mean, we're getting ready to go to the Texas State Fair in about 15, 16 days. And it's sort of the epitome of this culture. We're going down there for the stock show for a couple days. We'll walk around the fairgrounds, eat some food, most of it fried, and
Oh,
like I think that this idea of Texas is sort of, I'm a romantic by nature to some degree.
mhm.
Texas is sure easy to find romance in, and I think it lends itself really well to that type of storytelling. It's in the same way that, right, when you look at a Batman story from the comic side of things and you see Gotham as its own character.
Yeah.
I think a lot of Western authors treat Texas the same way. The landscape and the state and the history, it all becomes its own sort of living, breathing character in the story where it couldn't take place in any other place, right? It had to be Texas.
Mhm.
And I think that's so alluring to writers and to stories that these unique characters in this unique place that is still alive today. And that's my biggest thing in being a contemporary Western author is this idea that these things are not dead. These ideals, this lifestyle, this culture, these things are still alive. We're still passing them down. It's still something that we're engaged with every day. And we do want to kick back and read stories that reflect, our ideals and things that we want to see in the world and stories that are catered to, people who are living that. And
Mhm.
as strange and fantastic and otherworldly as this story gets, it's really grounded in this romanticism for the state of Texas, that opens up this whole world. And I always say, like, that's why I say it's inspired by the history of the Texas and the United States. And it starts in Texas, and it grows from there. But
Mhm.
the setting of that is really important, especially as I look at bringing this idea that the West is still alive today is highlighting just how much Texas is leading that charge and how often you can see it. I mean, you can say it yourself how many authors you've talked to from Texas that are out, telling those stories and really pushing for that. I think it's really cool to be a part of something like that and help push that to another generation because that's ultimately the biggest goal.
Yeah, it's very clear that Texas has a vibrant author community and dadlic community. And yeah, I mean, particularly East Texas, and I don't know if that's tied to the fact that Houston's the fourth largest metro area. Third, is it bigger?
It might be a bigger, but I think that's probably a big part of it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Houston, Dallas, Fort Worth, San Antonio. You got
Hmm.
some big cities, and not so much where I'm at. I'm an hour away from a grocery store, but but I
That's
think
pretty, that's actually, well, I mean, other than if you want some beef,
got plenty of that.
you're 50 yards from a grocery store
Yep.
if you want
Got
some
lots of deep
beef.
freezes full. That much is for, and they build plenty of Dollar Generals around here, I guess.
I had to go to a Dollar General recently. We went out to a state park in Western Maryland and
Yeah.
right on the border with Western Virginia. And people don't know that Western Maryland is basically like rural Pennsylvania. It's mountainous. You're in the middle of the Appalachian Mountains. And we were like, oh, well, we got to go to the grocery store. And that's like the only grocery store for 45 minutes is the Family Dollar.
Uh,
And you're not getting the best beef at the Family Dollar. Unless you're planning on making hamburger helper out of Slim Jims, you're in rough shape from the Family Dollar perspective.
it's a bit of a culture shock coming out here. That
Yeah.
much I would say, but it is something that
Well, what's it like to raise a kid out in the middle of nowhere? And what are the positives and what are the negatives
I
from a
think.
dad perspective?
Yeah, definitely. For me, the positives are being able to build something for yourself. Being able
Hmm.
to build something with your own hands, with your family, and say, this is yours, right? And I think that that's really hard to do in larger areas that aren't as welcoming to people who are starting out and building a life. I'm not renting an apartment. I'm not, doing these things to get up to a point. We can jump into it and have our own little world out here because
Hmm.
not it's not so connected with thousands of people who live 100 feet away from me. And that's, I don't have neighbors on either side. I have pastures. If I want to drive into town to a Walmart, I'm 30 minutes. If I want to go to a grocery store and a movie theater, it's an hour.
Hmm.
Um, some of those things are pros and cons. To me, the biggest pro in building a family out, in the middle of nowhere on a ranch is we get to, define what the house looks like, this childhood that when she grows up and goes out into the world is is frankly not as exposed as it would have been before. There are a lot of kids who have come from rural areas who have gone out and built something for themselves, and those kids are getting fewer and farther between. The
Hmm.
life and this upbringing that can lead to a lot of success and a lot of great traits and values and ideals that aren't so pigeonholed into what people believe they are, right?
Hmm.
We can teach things and loving people and being open and welcoming and really being a good, kind, decent person and have this household, and then we can go out into the world and we can do that as a family and experience that and help shape that. Where we're in your larger area, it's there whether you want it or not. It's
Hmm.
harder to control influences and access and things that you're not always going to be able to see coming. And I think that, it lends itself into the cons, right? We don't have as much of an opportunity to get into anything. We don't have as much exposure to people. So,
Mhm.
means, whether it's socializing, for younger children, or the opportunity to jump into whatever they want as they get older. I think the cons are really accessibility,
Yeah.
because we are so far from things.
So
And
basically, it's tough to put together like a 15-piece jazz band.
a little
Uh,
bit. YouTube it. And
you could probably do a 3-piece band like Crucifixorious
oh yeah.
from yeah, you could put together Crucifixorious,
Yep.
but if you're looking to do a serious jazz endeavor, it's gonna be tough.
It definitely is. And I say you can get a happy medium. I like being able to come home and we're by ourselves. I can look up, see all the stars at night, and I can be at our home. But it's good to go out into the world, go drive to Houston, go see a Texans game, go shopping, go hit the restaurants, go spend the day there, come home. I think that, finding that balance is super important. If I live in the middle of Houston, I can't find that balance. I'm there all the time. And I
Yeah.
think, where we're at now gives us the opportunity to get the best of both worlds. And, we take advantage of it as much as we can. And I think that it really lends itself towards having a family because, especially, my daughter's 14 months right now. It's hard to go to a restaurant,
Yeah, you think?
Yeah, so like that's I right now I'm very much in the pros category of this is fantastic. We're gonna go play with our cows, drive around on the side by side, do our thing. Uh,
Yep.
as we get older and we want to do things and go out and see the world, it'll be a little bit harder.
Yep.
But we'll take each day. But I think as far as being a father, that was a big part of it. Is when I was young, my dad would walk my brother and I around the 95 acres out here and say, all of
Mhm.
this is y'all's when you grow up. And that's really cool. But now I get to take my daughter out and it's double that. I get to
Yep.
say, this is yours and it's twice as much as what my dad gave me. And I think that right there is what gets me out of bed every morning.
Yeah. So I'm also in a 3-generation household. And so you're in I don't know if the household is 3 generations, but the ranch is 3 generations, I imagine. Unless you threw your parents off.
Right. Where I am technically the third generation working it. My grandfather's 86. He's still putzing around working on cars. And
Good for him.
oh yeah, he's fantastic. He's as in shape as he's ever been. And I'm lucky enough to really get these daily experiences of working cattle with my father and being able to do things with my grandfather, having my daughter out. Uh,
Mhm.
those are really big moments that I just would not have. And
Mhm.
for somebody like me who really treasures that, I think that it's indispensable.
Yeah, do you think what are obviously the positives for just having that around, having family around, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And it's even to a place where my wife's family is from California, and
Hmm.
we're better prepared and equipped now to have her whole family out to stay with us however long they want. And we get to be around them even more because we have our own place, we have room for them, and we can have that opportunity because
Hmm.
the work life schedule has the potential for that. We can have them out whenever to be with their grandbaby, and that's been really cool too because I always say it's as well rounded as we can get. Our daughter, the better. So I want her to know her family from California as much as she knows her family from Texas because that is
Hmm.
that type of well-roundedness that she's not going to get if she's only in this deep East Texas area her whole
We well, my mine and my wife's family are all up in New England.
life.
So, although my daughter, she will articulate when she gets the chance, she is a Virginian, uh, which is which she even has a little Southern belle twang to it.
Oh.
Yeah. Which her her mother and I, who are from Maine originally, we we say things like and and um and have a bit of a New England accent, which doesn't show through as much now that we've been outside there for a lot.
Yeah,
But at the same time, I think there's so much value in having grandparents around and having that three generation household. And I think to our extent, we're actually pretty thrilled that one of these days we'll be able to send her up there for the summer. You
right.
know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's just a nice thing to
yeah.
be able to do and to get her to have a different experience. So,
I totally agree. I mean,
yeah.
my wife, when she lived in Texas, her family was in Texas. She had all of her family in California. She'd go stay the summer in California.
Yeah.
Well, now my daughter's grandparents are out in California, and we can recreate that.
Yeah.
Some of those treasured memories on my wife's side, we can do for our daughter as well. And because we're out
Hmm.
here, we have that opportunity. So it's really cool. And I think as you really embrace being a dad, those things do become a lot more important.
Yeah, you definitely value them more and you're more aware of them too.
You are.
Yeah, yeah. The so let's talk ranch here because you have a ranch. What's the best cut of beef that
Oh,
you've got on hand and that you're most excited when you either cook it fresh, because I imagine the best cut of beef you're not going to freeze. What's your favorite cut of beef you're getting off the cattle on the ranch?
interesting. Everybody's going to tell you the ribeye. They're always going to tell you the ribeye is the best thing. It's the best steak. It's the best marbling. You'll always be able to judge anybody's beef by the ribeye they're putting out.
Mm.
I'll tell you what I'm excited about right now, and it's going to make me seem every Texan is going to cringe when I say it.
Is it
Uh,
the skirt steak?
I love a good skirt steak. I love fajitas. It's the
I
next.
love a skirt steak.
I will tell you, I am excited about the tri-tip right now.
Really?
The tri-tip is coming up big. I see it in grocery stores in Texas now, which I
Mm.
never saw growing up. When I met my wife, she always talked about how they barbecued tri-tip out in California. And I
Yeah.
was, don't even know what you're talking about. I have no idea what tri-tip is, and I was raised on a ranch. Uh, but it's an incredibly versatile piece of beef that you can smoke, you can
Mhm.
sear, you can treat it like a roast, you can do whatever you want with it, and it's fantastic. And I think that even Texans are catching on to it because I'm seeing it out here and it's becoming more popular. And I think that we're seeing a surge of that particular cut, especially here in Texas,
Yep.
and what it can do. Everybody loves to smoke out here. And I've done brisket, I've done all the cool stuff. I've spent 20 hours hovering over a smoker for brisket. I can smoke a dry tip in 2 hours, sear it with a
I was gonna say, brisket is one of these fascinating things because my people, the the Hebes, the Jews, we cook a brisket, but we cook it in the oven in its own fat, and we cook it that way to keep it tender and moist. But
yeah,
I smoke it as well.
yeah. That's
And and
most people are going to say brisket is the premier Texas thing, right?
yeah, but it's why is it so expensive? It is not the reason you're smoking it. The reason you are smoking brisket is because if you cook it too fast, it is too tough to eat. Or if you don't cook it like the Ashkenazi Jews do, or like my father does, in sort of a liquid immersion,
Mhm.
it is too tough to eat.
Yeah,
And even in the liquid immersion, it dries out as you cook it. But
yeah.
that's okay because, it's moist and it's sauced and that sort of stuff. Why has brisket become so expensive? Is it just because everyone learned how to smoke it and now this meat that used to be fairly cheap? Because would you say that there's a big difference between like an Angus brisket and a normal non-Angus brisket?
I'm trying to think of which way to take this one. Um,
Well, I mean, on
yeah,
your cow, obviously the Angus best thing you've ever tasted is Rolls Royce, a brisket. But
yeah, I think so. Here's my take on it. I think
yes,
brisket is expensive because yes, it's trendy right now. I
yeah,
think that it's expensive because I mean you're only going to get so much brisket out of a cow,
yeah.
right? You're pretty
It's a
limited.
it's a big piece of meat. There's a lot of carrying cost
For sure, yeah.
associated with it.
And
Yeah,
a cow's pretty much going to give you a brisket.
yeah,
That I've sold steers to people who are like, I want T-bones and ground beef, and that's all I want. And I've got to be like, sir, a steer's only going to get you the T-bones it's going to get you. There's a lot of other cuts in there that I
yeah.
I can't turn into T-bones, you know. Yeah, I think that's right
Like
off the
the
top.
yeah,
That's probably my reasons for why it's gone up. A big part of why it's gone up is part of why all of beef has gone up. Right now, the U.S. cattle size or the herd size is at its smallest it's been since 1951. But we're producing 30% more beef than we were in 1951. And
yeah,
I think
because the cattle's just better and more efficient. Yeah.
genetics were we convert feed to meat a lot easier. The cattle are more proficient. They move around. They calve easier.
Hmm.
All these things. I will say Angus has the marketing to make you think it's better, right? Certified Angus beef, the brand that you see everywhere, is really just a black cow. It doesn't have to be
Yeah.
an Angus to get that brand. I can bring my purebred limousine cow up to be processed. I can sell it as certified Angus beef because it was black hided.
Hmm.
Angus is the business breed, is what their slogan is. They got a great marketing team, and they have a lot of people believing that that brand appeal is what makes good beef. And I think that, you know, when we look at a lot of people are saying Wagyu is like the next tier up. You want Angus, and then even better is Wagyu. I think that I'm sold on it. That's not what makes great beef for me, is it's too fatty. Uh,
Yeah.
you know, that's when I look at marbling, I'm looking at how juicy is this, because that marbling is the fat that renders while you're cooking it.
Yeah.
Uh, you ever had way too much marbling in your steak and you cook it and you didn't actually get that much steak? You know, there's
Yes,
a
I have had that happen.
yeah, it's
Yes.
a pretty common thing. And I think when you see it, Angus have done a lot for other breeds. We call them limb flex because where they're Angus limousine crosses, you get some good
Hmm.
marbling out of Angus. You get some good production out of it. You know, they got good rib shape. They're growthy, and you know they do.
So, so you do Angus cattle. Are you so for example, I mean, there's the dairy compact. Is there an Angus beef compact?
Not as much because the Angus breed is the Angus
Or is
breed.
it just a beef compact, right? Where you guys contribute?
Yeah, a little bit because like a lot of ours are show quality. They don't get turned into beef.
Yeah.
The cut calves will go to the sale barn, and that's what we feed the nation with. Except we export all of our beef and buy from Brazil and India and all these places. That's a different podcast.
Yeah.
Uh, that's a different complaint. That's
Yes,
so
the dadlet community is about to get into my obsession with agricultural economics, which
oh,
I am.
I can do that all night here. That's
Yeah.
my biggest thing is that, you know, what we do with limousine cattle crossed with Angus is we get a lot of the best of both worlds. I've got better marbling, I've got better feed to weight gain out of my Limflex crosses. I've
Yeah.
got better sustainability. They're less of the heart deficiencies that a lot of Anguses have. They're more docile. They milk better. I've got across the board Limflex, I think outperforms for what we're running in cattle and what we expect in the pasture and how they produce. And I think that
Hmm.
translates to better beef also. That's all up in the air. Everybody's got their own taste, but I think that you can find what is this really ideal combination in Linflex. Uh,
Hmm.
and the Angus breed is more than happy to slap that certified Angus beef label on it all the same because they're black hided. So, best of both worlds, I guess. Uh, that's that's just the way it is. But I will say that, what we look at to make the perfect cow, a part of that is they have to have a good carcass. They
Yeah.
need to be able to produce. They need ribeye marbling. They need fat content. They need to be able to hit the weight gain that they need to be at, and these cattle can do it. And they're hardy. It's 90 degrees here. It's not felt hat season. I'm still in my straw hat, and these
Yeah.
cows are still producing. We're still grazing and feeding, and just they're really hardy cattle, and they work well for this area, and that's a
Hmm.
part of it.
Yeah, I think I try to sort of explain, um, the agricultural economy of the United States is so dynamic with so many diversified roles at this point. It's absolutely fascinating, and to my mind, like writing a contemporary Western where someone steals some prime Angus bull semen from a prime Angus, famous bull, and tries to utilize it to rip those people off would make a great Western.
Uh,
Yeah, like a cozy Western.
yeah.
Like, what happened? Wait, what's going on? Type of thing.
Let me add another wrinkle to that. I'll tell a
Yes.
story about a limousine bull named King's Landing. Well,
Hmm.
he's used a lot in the limousine world. His semen is $600 a straw,
There
and
you go.
it's very expensive. But here's the kicker: is that bull is dead. He is no longer living. People still use his semen because they collect it a lot while he's alive. Only bull I've heard, I'm sure there's several more, I just haven't heard them, that when this bull died, they collected post mortem.
Yeah.
So after that bull died, they collected what semen was left. They're not making any more of it. They haven't
Hmm.
cloned them. They haven't done anything like that. What you got is what you got.
Yep.
That is a wild thing because I mean, we just did a genetic sale where we sold a choose your flush. We got 4 donors, and we had, one straw King's Landing semen that you can use those donors with. That bull
Hmm.
dead and gone, and the genetic line is still working really well. A lot of people
Yep.
don't even know that you can do that type of thing post mortem. That is not part of normal conversation throughout. It's
That's you only get that on the Dadlet pod
that's right.
where we talk about dead bull semen.
It's a normal conversation out here.
Well, yeah, yeah. Well, so this is the interesting thing, like
Yeah.
in contemporary ag. I think uh, one of my favorite books that I like to talk about is Sharper Objects by, I think it's by Gillian Flynn, where she talks about her mother owning the big pig farm, which I think was in southern Missouri or northern Arkansas, and ag, contemporary modern ag has so many great stories that I think need to be told. So I'm just thrilled that you're telling them, and that you're making them part of the Western genre.
Absolutely. I'm very excited to be able to have that opportunity, of course, but also to bring people in who are listening to this podcast who may be thinking, what in the heck just happened? Right? What was that? To a lot of people, they're going to be like, yeah, that's normal. It's not a big deal. They're treating it like a big deal. But a lot of people don't think like that, right? Like,
Yeah,
a lot of people, their view of the West is you've got Wyatt Earp standing there gunning down some outlaws at the OK Corral.
yeah.
And I want to bring people like that who that is their view of the West. And I want to use that as an introduction point. So I'm gonna talk about my work with Wolfpack Publishing real quick. I know we're
Yeah, absolutely.
here.
Yeah, yeah. Plug
Wolfpack,
away, my friend.
yeah,
Plug away.
Wolfpack Publishing has been sort of my ticket to be able to do what I'm doing tonight. I wrote the story A Day Late and a Bullet Short as a standalone. I wrote it as this one story that I needed to finish. I needed to finish a book. I've got a million drafts that were not finished in my Google Docs. I knew I wanted to do this. I needed to finish one. And that was what this book was. And as I'm writing it, I'm following Wolfpack, and I don't understand how the book is not a Wolfpack publishing book. It's exactly what they're doing. And that was my pitch to them. I said, hey, this is done. I'm pitching it. I don't know in what world this isn't a book you're interested in. So take a look. Let me know if you are interested in it. And it worked out really well. They said, hey, we don't really take on a lot of new unestablished authors, that this is their first book. But I'm also a younger contemporary Western author, and I know how to get my word count. So I can, if you want me to keep writing, I can tell a lot of stories. And they said, we're going to take a chance on you. And I will be forever grateful that they even published one book, much less gave me a book deal. Let me participate in some short stories. Let me, get to know incredible authors like Chris Mullen. Having my work published from the publisher who's churning out Robert Vaughn stories. These are really, really cool things. They said, "Hey, we love the first book. We think it's great. We want you to tell more." I said, "Give me a couple days." I come back. I talk it over with my wife, who is still pregnant at the time, and I said, "Look, they're gonna, they want to sign me to a book deal, I think." And she says, "If you think you can keep up with it while being a new dad, please do." And she gave me the go ahead, and I came back and I said, here's what I'm going to call the world of bullets, and we're going to introduce readers to a contemporary Western. So the Bullets trilogy is really inspired by the Dollars trilogy from Sergio Leone. They're somewhat connected, but also not connected. So you'll find each Bullets trilogy novel follows a different generation in the family, and it's something that tells this much larger story. But it also opens up a whole other world where the West is really alive in ways that you may not expect. When you read A Day Late and a Bullet Short, I always get the feedback that that was not at all what I was expecting. Pretty wild stuff in it. I am a horror fan. I'm a fan of a lot of different genres, and I think the Western really lends itself. Weird West is super popular right now.
Yep.
The genre is really open to these different types of interpretations. One of my favorite dime novels is this. It's a cover of Wyatt Earp riding a horse, standing upright, and there's a skeleton waving a torch in front of him, and it's this wild view. And I'm like, okay, I really infuse a lot of that into this world of bullets, and I bring the myth of the West, what made the Wild West, this mythology that we interact with, like Greek mythology or Roman mythology, where we treat these people as gods among men. I bring that into this world, and I put it in a contemporary setting where it's alive today, where it's always been alive. So you get these fantastic tales of this lost treasure that's buried, where there's a map hidden in the stars. I've got, Three Bullets to the Wind is literally based on this real rumor of Sitting Bull when he used to tour Buffalo Bill's show, the entrance. He was the opening act, right? Sitting Bull would do one lap around the ring as an introduction, and when he did, the rumor was that he would curse the audiences beneath under his tongue as he did it. And I said, well, what if that curse was real? Bam, there's book two. Caddo mythology really deals with the trickster, the coyote trickster. I do a very literal take on what if that coyote trickster was a real figure in the world. And it sort of opens the door to something that you're not too sure is really Western, but it's overtly Western in the same breath. So Wolfpack Publishing was all in on it. They gave me a book deal for the three books, plus an introduction novel, short story in Riding with the Pack, Volume 2. And I recently signed an extension for three more books in the series that makes up the world of bullets, and that is I'm pretty excited to get these out.
That's exciting.
Yeah, I've got The Coward Rob Ford coming, The Fighting Earps, and Sure Shot. that are really household names, that are legends that people know of the Wild West, that are bringing them into a contemporary setting in a really fun, exciting way that treats the myth of the West with as much reverence and sort of otherworldly aspirations as you might find in an old dime novel. And I think that's a really cool approach and something that people are not used to seeing. And it deals with modern agriculture issues, contemporary Western themes, all set in Texas. And I think it's a really cool combination. Part of what I talked to Wolfpack Publishing was about was the how the Conjuring universe for the films is structured. So I really have leaned into sort of this expansive type of storytelling that everything plays together, but they're also, you can just watch them or you can just pick them up and read them on their own. And Wolfpack Publishing has been so supportive every step of the way and really given me a ticket to write what I want to write and tell the stories I want to tell. And they've been behind me every step of the way.
Well, that's awesome, Nick. And I want to thank you for coming on and telling us all about your books. And look, all the best in writing that next series with an 18-month-old and a ranch.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Well, this has been the Dadlit Pod with Nicholas Osborn. Go out and check out his Bullet series from the Black Wolf Publishing.
Wolfpack Publishing.
Wolfpack Publishing. Sorry. I know it's Wolfpack Pub. No, I'm sorry. From Wolfpack Publishing. Yes. Why did I think Black Wolf? Because they've got a black paw as a logo.
They do. And there's Wise Wolf
Yes.
books also. So,
Yes. Well, anyway, thanks, Nick. This has been an episode of the Dadlit Pod. I'm Dan Roberts.
Our time together has come to an end. It's time to return to your wife, kids, and friends. It's time to pick up those books you forgot while you wait for the next Dadlit Pod.